Left with her daughter and no name, she found a new life when a cowboy gave her his last name. The sun was low in the sky when Eliza reached the edge of Willow Bend. The road behind her was long, dry, and quiet. Dust clung to her worn dress, and her steps were slow, but she did not stop. In her arms, she held her young daughter, Clara, who rested her head against her shoulder. Willow Bend was a small town. Wooden buildings stood in a row, and a few people moved about their day. Some carried buckets, some talked outside the store, and others watched the road. It was the kind of place where everyone noticed a stranger. And they noticed Eliza. She paused for a moment before stepping into town. Her eyes moved from one place to another, unsure of where to go first. She looked tired, but there was also something strong in her face. She was not just passing through, she was looking for a place to stay. Clara lifted her head and looked around with wide eyes. "Mama, is this our new home?" she asked softly. Eliza gave a small smile. "I hope so," she said. They walked slowly down the main street. A few people glanced at them. Some nodded politely, but others whispered quietly. It was clear they were curious. A woman with a child and no clear direction always brought questions. Eliza stopped near a bench and gently set Clara down. She adjusted her bag and looked toward the general store. It seemed like a good place to start. Inside the store, the air was cooler. Shelves were filled with simple goods: flour, cloth, tools, and jars. Behind the counter stood an older man with kind eyes. He looked at Eliza for a moment before speaking. "Afternoon," he said. "You new here?" Eliza nodded. "Yes, sir. I just arrived." He studied her face, not in a harsh way, but as if trying to understand her story. "What can I help you with?" Eliza hesitated. "I'm looking for work," she said. "Any kind. I can clean, cook, or help around." The man rubbed his chin. "Work isn't easy to find here," he said slowly. "But folks always need a hand now and then." Clara walked closer to her mother and held her hand. The man looked down at the child and smiled. "What's your name, little one?" "Clara," she said proudly. "That's a fine name," he replied. Then he looked back at Eliza. "And your full name?" For a brief moment, Eliza froze. Her eyes dropped and her voice softened. "Eliza. Just Eliza." The man noticed the pause but did not press further. "Well," he said gently, "everyone starts somewhere. You can ask around town. Maybe someone will need help." Eliza nodded. "Thank you." She took Clara's hand and they stepped back outside. The sun was warmer now and the town felt a little less welcoming than before. They walked for a while, asking a few people for work. Some shook their heads. Others said maybe later. No one was unkind, but no one offered much help either. As the day went on, Clara grew tired. Eliza found a small shaded spot near an old fence and sat down with her. She pulled out a small piece of bread from her bag and gave it to Clara. "Will we stay here tonight?" Clara asked. Eliza looked around. She did not have an answer yet. "We'll find a place," she said softly. At that moment, a horse stopped nearby. Eliza looked up. Sitting on the horse was a man dressed in simple cowboy clothes. His hat shaded his face, but his eyes were calm and steady. He looked at the broken fence beside them and then at Eliza. "Looks like you picked a rough spot to rest," he said in a quiet voice. Eliza stood up quickly. "We'll move," she said. "Sorry." The man shook his head. "No need for that." He stepped down from his horse and walked over to the fence. One of the wooden pieces had come loose. Without saying much, he bent down and began fixing it. His movements were slow and careful. Clara watched him with interest. "Are you fixing it?" she asked. He gave a small nod. "Just making it better," he said. Eliza watched in silence. She was not used to people helping without asking questions. It made her unsure, but also a little hopeful. After a few minutes, the man stood up. "There," he said. "Should hold for a while." Eliza nodded. "Thank you," she said quietly. He looked at her for a moment, then at Clara. "You just got into town?" "Yes," Eliza replied. He paused as if thinking, but did not ask anything more. Instead, he reached into his saddlebag and took out a small bottle of water. He handed it to her. "For the road," he said. Eliza hesitated, then accepted it. "Thank you," she said again. The man gave a small nod, then climbed back onto his horse. "Name's Thomas," he said. Before Eliza could reply, he tipped his hat slightly and rode off down the street. Clara waved at him with a bright smile. "Bye?" Eliza watched him go. She did not know why, but something about him felt different. Not curious, not judging, just kind. As the sun began to set, Eliza held Clara close and looked around the town once more. Maybe Willow Bend was not just another stop on the road. Maybe it was the place where things could finally begin. The next morning in Willow Bend began with a soft golden light. The town slowly woke up as doors opened and people stepped outside to start their day. Eliza had not slept much that night. She and Clara had rested near the same fence, using her bag as a pillow. It was not comfortable, but it was enough. Clara stretched her arms and smiled. "Good morning, Mama," she said. Eliza brushed Clara's hair gently. "Good morning, my little star," she replied. Even though she was tired, she kept her voice warm and calm. Eliza knew she could not spend another day without finding proper work. She stood up, held Clara's hand, and walked back toward the main street. This time, she moved with more purpose. She could not give up now. As they passed by the general store again, the same older man noticed them. He stepped outside and called, "Eliza!" She turned, a little surprised that he remembered her name. "I spoke to Mrs. Carter," he said. "She runs the bakery at the end of the street. She might need some help." Eliza's face lit up with quiet hope. "Thank you," she said quickly. "I will go there now." The man nodded kindly. "Good luck." Eliza and Clara walked faster this time. At the end of the street, a small bakery stood with its door slightly open. The smell of fresh bread filled the air. Clara smiled wide. "Smells so good," she said. Eliza gently squeezed her hand. "Let's try," she said. Inside, a middle-aged woman stood behind a table, kneading dough. She looked up as the door opened. "Yes?" she asked. Eliza stepped forward. "Good morning. I heard you might need help. I can clean, serve, or do anything you need." The woman studied her for a moment. She looked at Clara, then back at Eliza. "I don't have much to offer," she said, "but I do need help in the mornings." Eliza nodded quickly. "That's enough. I will work hard." The woman gave a small smile. "All right then. You can start today." Clara clapped softly, and Eliza felt a small wave of relief. It was not much, but it was a beginning. As Eliza began her work, she cleaned tables and helped organize bread. Clara sat in a corner, watching quietly and playing with a small piece of cloth. From time to time, the bakery woman would give her a small piece of bread, and Clara's face would light up with joy. By midday, Eliza was tired but grateful. She had earned a few coins and a warm meal. It felt like the first real step forward. When they left the bakery, the sun was high, and the town seemed a little friendlier than before. A few people nodded at her, some even smiled. As Eliza and Clara walked back toward the fence, they saw a familiar figure. Thomas was there again, standing beside his horse. Clara's eyes brightened. "It's him," she said, and she ran a few steps ahead. Thomas gave a small smile as she approached. "Hello again," he said. Eliza walked up slowly. "Good afternoon," she said. Thomas noticed the small bag in her hand. "You found work," he said. Eliza nodded. "At the bakery, just a little, but it helps." "That's good," he replied. There was a short silence. Eliza did not know what to say next. She was not used to simple conversations without worry. Thomas looked at the fence again, then back at her. "You can't stay here every night," he said calmly. "It's not safe for a child." Eliza lowered her eyes. "I know," she said softly. "I'm trying to find a place." Thomas thought for a moment. "There's an empty room behind the stable," he said. "It's small but clean. You can use it for now." Eliza looked up, surprised. I don't know how to thank you." "No need," he said simply. "Just a place to rest." Clara smiled brightly. "Thank you," she said. Thomas gave a small nod. "Come," he said. "I'll show you." They walked together toward the stable. It was not far, just behind a row of buildings. The room he showed them was simple, just a bed, a small table, and a window. But to Eliza, it felt like something much more. "It's perfect," she said quietly. Thomas stepped back. "You can stay as long as you need," he said. Eliza looked at him carefully. "Why are you helping us?" she asked. Thomas paused for a moment, then answered in a calm voice, "Because everyone needs a fair chance." His words were simple, but they stayed in the air long after he finished speaking. That evening, Eliza sat by the window while Clara rested on the bed. The soft light of the sunset filled the room. For the first time in a long while, Eliza did not feel lost. She still had no last name to give, no past to share. But now she had something new. A place. A beginning. And maybe, just maybe, someone who truly saw her. Days in Willow Bend began to feel softer for Eliza. The mornings were filled with the warm smell of bread at the bakery, and the evenings were quiet in the small room behind the stable. It was not a big life, but it was steady, and that meant everything to her. Clara had also changed. She laughed more now. She played outside the stable, sometimes chasing butterflies, sometimes watching the horses with bright, curious eyes. The stable had become her favorite place, especially when Thomas was around. Thomas was not a man of many words, but Clara liked him. He showed her simple things: how to brush a horse, how to tie a small knot, how to listen to the quiet sounds around them. Eliza often watched from a distance, unsure but thankful. One afternoon, the town held a small gathering near the center square. It was nothing grand, just people sharing food, talking, and enjoying the calm day. Mrs. Carter had encouraged Eliza to come. "It's good to be seen," she had said with a kind smile. Eliza was unsure at first, but she knew Clara would enjoy it. So she dressed Clara in her cleanest clothes and walked with her to the square. The town felt different that day. People were smiling, children were playing, and music played softly in the background. For the first time, Eliza did not feel like an outsider. A few people greeted her. Some even thanked her for her work at the bakery. Clara quickly ran to join the other children. Her laughter mixed with theirs, and Eliza felt a quiet warmth in her heart. As Eliza stood near a table, a friendly woman approached her. She had seen her before but never spoken to her. "You must be Eliza," the woman said kindly. "Yes," Eliza replied with a small nod. "And your daughter is Clara, right? She's a sweet child." Eliza smiled softly. "Thank you." The woman hesitated for a moment, then asked gently, "What's her full name?" The question was simple, but it felt heavy. Eliza's smile faded just a little. She looked toward Clara, who was laughing without worry. For a moment, Eliza could not speak. "Just Clara," she said quietly. The woman noticed the change but did not push further. "She's a lovely girl," she said, then gave a polite nod and walked away. But the question stayed. Later that evening, as the gathering slowly ended, Clara ran back to her mother. "Mama," she said happily, "they all have two names. Why don't I?" Eliza's heart tightened. She knelt down and gently held Clara's hands. "Because we are still finding ours," she said softly. Clara tilted her head. "Will we get one soon?" Eliza forced a small smile. "Maybe," she said. But inside, she was not sure. That night, after Clara had fallen asleep, Eliza stepped outside the stable. The sky was full of stars, quiet and endless. She stood there, thinking about the past she had left behind. A past she never spoke of. A name she had chosen to forget. As she stood there, she noticed Thomas nearby, checking on one of the horses. He moved calmly, as always, focused on his work. Eliza walked closer. "Thomas," she said softly. He turned slightly. "Evening," he replied. There was a short silence before Eliza spoke again. "Can I ask you something?" He nodded. She took a deep breath. "Do you think a name matters?" Thomas leaned lightly against the wooden fence. "It can," he said, "but not always in the way people think." Eliza looked down. "I never gave Clara a full name," she admitted. "I thought, if I left everything behind, we could start fresh. But now, it feels like I took something from her." Thomas listened quietly. He did not interrupt. "I didn't want my past to follow us," Eliza continued. "I didn't want her to carry anything heavy, so I left my name behind. I left all of it." Her voice was calm, but there was pain hidden in it. Thomas looked at her, not with pity, but with understanding. "A name doesn't have to carry the past," he said slowly. "It can be something new, something you choose." Eliza looked at him. "But what if I don't know what to choose?" Thomas paused, thinking. Then he said, "Then maybe you don't have to choose alone." Eliza did not fully understand his words at first, but something about them felt steady and kind. He straightened up and added, "You've already done the hard part. You came here. You stayed. That means something." Eliza felt a small shift inside her heart. For the first time, she did not feel ashamed of her silence. She felt seen. "Thank you," she said quietly. Thomas gave a small nod. "You're doing just fine," he replied. That night, Eliza returned to the room and looked at Clara as she slept peacefully. She sat beside her and gently brushed her hair. "A name," she whispered softly. For so long, she had been running from her past. But now she began to wonder. Maybe it was time to stop running and start choosing a future instead. The days after the town gathering felt different for Eliza. Something inside her had changed. She still worked at the bakery every morning, still returned to the small room behind the stable every evening. But now her thoughts were clearer. She was no longer only thinking about survival. She was thinking about the future. Clara continued to grow happier in Willow Bend. She had made friends, learned new games, and spent more time near the horses. Her laughter often filled the quiet air of the stable, and even the townspeople had begun to greet her by name with warm smiles. But the question about her name still stayed in Eliza's heart. One morning, while Eliza was arranging fresh bread at the bakery, Mrs. Carter looked at her and said gently, "You've done well here, Eliza. People trust you." Eliza paused. "Thank you," she said. Mrs. Carter smiled. "You don't have to carry everything alone, you know." Those words reminded Eliza of what Thomas had said. Maybe she really didn't have to face everything by herself anymore. That evening, after finishing her work, Eliza walked back to the stable with Clara. The sky was painted in soft orange and pink colors as the sun slowly went down. Thomas was there, as usual, taking care of the horses. Clara ran toward him with excitement. "Thomas, look, I learned a new song today." Thomas gave a small smile. "Let's hear it," he said. Clara sang happily, her voice light and full of joy. Eliza stood nearby, watching them. There was something peaceful about this moment, something she had not felt in a very long time. After Clara finished, she ran inside to rest. Eliza stayed outside. "Thomas," she said quietly. He turned to her. "Yes?" Eliza took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about what you said. About names." He nodded slightly but did not interrupt. "I think it's time I stop running from mine," she said. "But I don't want to go back to who I was. I want something new, for me and for Clara." Thomas listened carefully. Eliza continued, her voice soft but steady. "Clara deserves a name she can be proud of, something that gives her a place in this world." Thomas looked out toward the open land for a moment, then back at her. "You've already given her that," he said. "You brought her here. You gave her a chance." Eliza smiled faintly. "Maybe," she said, "but I want to give her more than just a chance. I want to give her a home, a name that feels like one." There was a quiet pause between them. Then Thomas spoke, his voice calm and simple. "If it helps, you can share mine." Eliza looked at him, surprised. "Your name?" He nodded. "Hale," he said. "It's not about anything special, just a name I've carried, but it could be something new for you, and for her." Eliza's heart felt full in that moment. It was not a grand offer, not filled with big words, but it meant more than anything she had ever been given. "Why would you do that?" she asked softly. Thomas met her eyes. "Because you deserve to belong somewhere," he said. "And so does she." Eliza felt tears rise, but she did not let them fall. Instead, she nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. The next morning, something small but important changed. At the bakery, when a customer asked Clara her name, she stood tall and smiled. "My name is Clara Hale," she said proudly. Eliza stood behind her, her heart full. Hearing those words felt like a new beginning. The town accepted it without question. In fact, it felt natural, like it had always been meant to be. Days turned into weeks, and life in Willow Bend grew stronger for them. Eliza worked with confidence. Clara played without worry. And Thomas remained steady, always nearby, never asking for anything in return. One evening, as the sun began to set, Eliza stood outside their small room. The sky stretched wide above her, just as it had on the day she arrived. But now, everything felt different. She was no longer just a stranger passing through. She was part of something. Thomas walked over and stood beside her. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Clara ran past them, laughing as she chased the soft wind. Eliza looked at Thomas and smiled, a real, peaceful smile. "Thank you," she said again. Thomas gave a small nod. "You found your way," he replied. Eliza looked out at the town, at the life she had built, and at the future ahead. She had arrived with nothing but fear and silence. Now she had a home, a name, and hope. And under the same wide sky, her story was no longer about what she had left behind, but about everything she had found.